Hello, St. Mark's. It's July 22nd, 2020. I'm Matt Wright with St. Mark's at midweek, and today we're going to camp. We're going to Tom Sawyer Camp, to be exact, with Maria Horner, who's the executive director of Catalina Island Camps, who is pinch hitting this summer at Tom Sawyer on the mainland and learning what it's like to be part of a day camp for the first time in almost 3 decades. There's a lot going on at Tom Sawyer with kids, and families, and everything else, so we're going to spend a little time with Maria and find out what's going on. Hi, Maria.
Hey, Matt. How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks for joining us in the middle of a busy summer, although a very different summer for you guys, both at Catalina Island Camp and at Tom Sawyer. And I wanted to just get an update from you and get a sense of what it's like out there in the camp world. What's happening with kids? What's happening with families? What's going on?
Well, it's definitely a different summer for us. This is the first summer in 27 years that Tom and I have been on the mainland and not on the island for the summer. But we were fortunate enough to be able to jump in and help out at Tom Sawyer Camps, which is the day camp here in Pasadena that Tom's family also owns and runs. So he and and Nick are all very involved with the day-to-day operation of that now. But it's very different, packing your lunch every day and having to wear closed-toed shoes But there are upsides, we're home every night for dinner and we get to see friends on the weekend, and that's something that we normally don't get to do in the summertime.
Right, that's right. How is being involved in Tom Sawyer different from being at a sleepover camp on the island? And what have you learned from this experience so far, being back at day camp?
That's an excellent question. Well, first of all, the kids here at Tom Sawyer are much younger. So they start at age 3, and the oldest kids are 13 and 14, but there aren't very many 13 and 14-year-olds. So most of the kids are much, much younger. Our kids on the island, we don't start until about 7 or 8, and the bulk of our kids are 12, 13, and 14 years old. So they are all very, very small. One of the things, I'm not sure if this is suitable for radio or not, so you'll edit me if it's not. One of the big differences, Friday, we joked Friday was a poopy day at camp. We had 3 accidents within an hour. One of the lessons that I learned, I file this under things a day camp director knows that a resident camp director doesn't, which is you need to carry around clean underwear all of the time, because you never know when a kid's going to need a pair of clean underwear. So that's a huge difference. But I think one of the things that's not different, obviously, is that kids really thrive when they're outside. They thrive when they're with their peers. They thrive when they're with young adults who want to hang out with them and play with them and have fun with them. And I think we've definitely noticed a deep amount of gratitude on the part of parents who have been home with kids for 3.5 months. And so kids having the chance to get outside and run and play and laugh, I think it's been really fun to watch.
That's great. How are you able to keep the kids apart? The required degree. I just can imagine kids running around and it's hard to keep everybody separated to the extent that they need to be. And certainly schools have been wrestling with this and will wrestle with this in the fall. What have you devised?
Sure. So one of the things that makes us obviously very different from a school is that we're all outside. We don't have any indoor space at Tom Sawyer whatsoever. And so much of what we're being told anyway by the experts is that contact is especially challenging when you're indoors in underventilated or unventilated areas. Well, that's not our situation. We're outside, we're in the park, it's breezy all of the time. So it's a little bit less of a concern. However, the way we're structured this summer, and we're operating about 40% of capacity. So we have all kinds of space to spread out. Our kids are in groups of 10, as opposed to in the past, they've been in groups of 12 to 13, and they have 2 counselors. And the groups then are organized into what we call units. So each unit has 4 groups. So there is no crossover from unit to unit. They are always completely separated. Within the unit, we work really hard to maintain that distance of 6 feet from group to group. Sometimes kids, groups walk past each other. But again, the other thing that you keep reading is it's not just about proximity, but it's also about duration. And there's a difference between passing somebody within 6 feet and being in close proximity for extended periods of time. Within the group, it gets a little bit harder, because if you can imagine, if you had a group of 10 children and everyone was 6 feet away from each other all of the time, you would need a megaphone to be able to speak with them because of the amount of space that you would take up. So our kids and our staff wear masks all of the time, except for when they're eating or when they are in water play that involves them getting completely wet, because we don't want their masks getting wet. And so that cuts down on a lot of the risk. But keeping kids separate, I mean, it's definitely a challenge.
Yeah. Are there any programs that you've added as a result of this? Or are there any that you've had to diminish or remove from the schedule because of present circumstances?
It's funny. The first thing that popped to my mind is, our son, Nick, his job this summer involves teaching challenge and team building activities to the middle school kids. And most team building activities involve using a great deal of equipment that you're touching and or actually physically touching one another.
Mm-hmm.
So he has had to get really creative and reach out to other people he knows to get some help with coming up with activities that are low touch or no touch, because that's not really the way team building activities work. But they've managed. They've managed quite well. Our groups aren't playing games and sports against each other. It used to be really common that 2 or 3 groups would get together and play a game of kickball or play a game of dodgeball or, play any one of the millions of camp games that we play. And now groups will play that. So a group of 10 kids will play a game together, but we won't have multiple groups of kids playing.
Okay. No intramurals.
No intramurals, no.
Okay. And I know you've kept the horse program going, so kids are able to ride.
Yeah, and actually we started doing horseback riding long before we even knew day camp could open, because the County of Los Angeles opened equestrian programs before they opened other recreational programs. So we've been offering horseback riding lessons since probably late April, early May. So our horseback riding program has changed a little bit. We don't have as many kids out on a ride at a time. Some of that has as much to do with the number of kids we have in camp as it does with regulations. But everything, all of that equipment gets cleaned in between each person. Same thing. It's easy to stay 6 feet apart when you're on a horse. Let's just say that.
What do you say to parents who are debating sending their kids to camp? Not necessarily even Tom Sawyer camp, but any day camp.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not talking directly to many parents in my role here, but I was talking to tons of parents who were trying to make the decision about whether or not they wanted to send their kids to Catalina this summer. And what I've told parents, and what I know people here are telling parents, is that every family has to make their own choice. It's got to be what's best for your family. We are taking pretty extraordinary efforts to keep kids and staff safe this summer, but despite our best efforts, we can't make any guarantees. We can't make guarantees that a kid's not going to get sick or hurt in a normal summer, let alone in this summer. And so parents have to sort of weigh that risk versus reward based on their own family situation. All of the camps that I know of, people that I'm friends with who are operating, have had very generous refund policies, so that if you decide as a family, this just isn't going to work for us this summer, you're not making a decision that you're uncomfortable with because you're afraid of losing money. So I think that helps a lot of people. We talk parents through the procedures and protocols that we have in place. And then at the end of the day, again, they have to make the decision that's best for them. And for many families, if they don't have someone at home who has a compromised immune system, or for whatever reason is at greater risk, they're more comfortable with sending their kids to camp.
Yeah. Now, you guys are members of the American Camp Association, right?
Correct. Mm-hmm.
And tell me what the National has been up to, and have they been supportive? Have they been a helpful organization for you guys?
Absolutely. So the National organization, back in March or maybe early April, contracted with an organization that does this kind of work professionally to create standards and guidelines for camps to use for reopening. It became pretty clear that the governmental agencies weren't moving quickly enough. So our professional association hired a firm to do that. And so we've had this massive booklet of guidelines and protocols for months that we've been able to work with and make decisions on. And the information in that booklet is from authoritative sources. So from the early information that the CDC put out, as well as the American Association of Pediatrics and different environmental health departments that were working on guidelines. So we've had really good support and really good guidance from them. And, in the state of California, day camps were given permission to open, but resident camps weren't. And that was just merely a case of the public health departments were overwhelmed with all of the other work they were doing. So getting on board with guidelines so that they felt it was safe for resident camps to open just didn't happen.
Good. Well, before I let you go, I wanted to ask you what's going on in the island since you're not there.
Yeah, oh gosh, it's so sad. So we aren't able to operate as an organized camp, but we were given permission, as were other organized camps, to open as a campground. So we're renting out cabins to family groups who want to come and spend some time on the island. And it really is a great and I think really safe family vacation. We're only allowing 4 groups in camp at a time, 4 groups of about 15. So 60 people in camp as opposed to the 200-ish we would normally have if we had a full summer with staff. Every group has their own cabins, their own bathrooms, their own showers, their own area on the beach, their own equipment to use. Separate areas in the dining hall. So for people who are looking for a close and easy and relatively safe getaway, we're renting, we do Friday, Saturday, Sundays, and Monday through Thursday rentals.
That sounds great.
Yeah, we've had really good feedback. We had a family, a dad with his 2 boys there last week, and he wrote us the most beautiful email about how he felt having his boys at camp after having them home for 3.5 months, just watching them run across the field, watching them kayak, watching them, hike, and seeing them sort of come alive again after all of these months of being indoors. And that's a similar sentiment we're hearing from parents at Tom Sawyer. The favorite line that I hear is, "I feel like I have my child back again."
That's, what a feeling.
Yeah, exactly. Like they know that their kids have really been struggling with being indoors and not being able to see their friends, and now they can, and they've seen a real change as a result. And that's really heartening.
How long does camp continue?
We are in our 4th week, and so then we have 3 more weeks after this one.
Okay, good. Maria Horner, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks, Matt.
And thank you for being with us on this edition of St. Mark's at Midweek. Thanks to our associate producers, Emily Wright and Lucy Grindon, although Emily was absent today, which may account for the weird glitches in the Zoom transmission. Well, better luck next week. Another update from St. Mark's next Wednesday and our regular worship podcast on Sunday. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, and be good to each other. I'm Matt Wright.